In the Division 2, talents give agents powerful abilities, the most powerful among them being on chest pieces and backpacks. By the numbers, Versatile is one of the highest potential damage talents in the game, giving 35% amplified damage to the user upon weapon swap. So why does almost no one use this talent? How can we build around it and use it to its maximum effectiveness? At the end of the day, will this build actually be competitive or fall short? Let's find out today in another interesting investigation, this one about the backpack talent Versatile. Hey agents, it's Dispatch. Welcome to the channel, where we talk about the math, builds, lore, and game design of Tom Clancy's The Division 2. Let's get stuck into it. First, let's talk about what the talent actually does. It provides an amplified damage bonus to a weapon upon weapon swap. By amplified, of course, we mean that this bonus will always be multiplicative. It creates its own multiplier in the damage equation. There are a couple caveats, however. First, this talent only activates if you swap from an eligible weapon to a different eligible weapon of a different type. Swapping to or from a pistol or signature weapon will prevent the bonus from being active. Second, the weapon types have to be different. Third, as we can see from the talent description, the damage bonus only applies to enemies within a specified range, which can be very hard to gauge as a player. SMGs, shotguns, MMRs, and rifles get a whopping 35% damage, higher than any other talent besides Intimidate and other talents that require stacking. Unfortunately, ARs and LMGs have the hardest range requirement and only give 10%, so it goes without saying that you shouldn't use an AR or an LMG with this talent. Because pistols will deactivate the talent, I'd recommend running a sawed-off shotgun in your sidearm slot to save yourself from some frantic weapon swapping to try and reactivate the bonus. The bonus lasts 10 seconds, which is respectable, and you can swap anytime after 5 seconds for no penalty. So let's talk about some possible synergies that we could use with this talent. You'd think that Tip of the Spear might be a good idea, since you get a bonus for your main weapons for using a signature weapon. I wish this activated, but as of now, using a signature weapon will not activate the bonus, so unfortunately this one's out. Massive, please add signature weapons to the talent. Gunslinger is another really interesting talent option with obvious synergy. However, the damage bonus is very short at only 5 seconds. You can make this work, but there are simply better chest talents that last longer and don't risk running out. If running an MMR, Headhunter is obviously better. If running an SMG or shotgun, Obliterate will give you more bang for your buck. You can also run a defensive chest. There aren't as many good options here as there are on the backpack, but you could try Ridgeways or Tardigrade. However, we should probably stick with the total weapon damage talent on the chest, as that will take advantage of the multiplicative nature of Versatile. So I'd recommend Obliterate. Dodge City Gunslinger also sounds like a good option. It gives a huge damage bonus upon weapon swap. But once again, we are thwarted by the devs inexplicably leaving pistols out of the talent. Why? There was so much potential here. So we got two rough builds going on here so far, a close range build and a long range build. Let's settle the long range build first, as we can co-opt our sniper build from our best build in the Division 2 video. The build had a ninja bike backpack, chain killer chest, 3-piece hotshot, 1-piece Habsburg, everything rolled to headshot damage. Since we're losing the ninja bike, we're getting way more damage, but we'll have to drop the Habsburg and put a hotshot piece to keep the hotshot talent. This long range build is nice because it's easy to keep the enemy at range, so we're actually getting the benefit from the buff without having to calculate the exact distance. As long as they are pretty far away, we can be pretty confident that the buff is active. This is the first problem with this talent, and why I believe it isn't used very often. On most builds, it's really hard to know the distance of your enemies to know if the bonus is active. If the enemy moves just far enough away from the barrel of your SMG, you've lost the bonus. However, thankfully, with the long range build, we don't need to worry about it that much. We can use Versatile just to get the first kill to start our Headhunter stacks. After that, the extra damage does aid in the damage numbers quite a bit, but it doesn't seem to give us the full 35% at the top end. This might be able to get us to a new breakpoint, but it's dubious at best, especially when we have talents like Vigilance available that get us almost as much damage. But in our long range build, we now run into a problem. Determined. Determined deactivates if we swap away from the weapon that it is on. This means we'll have to hit more headshots if we need to re-proc Versatile, and we'll have to wait an extra 7 or 8 seconds to swap, wait for the Versatile timer, then swap back to our MMR. As I said in the best build video, we are going for consistency instead of Unga Boonga damage. So while Versatile is an option for this type of build, I would stick with our existing build instead. This problem with Determined also exists with the vast majority of weapon talents. How does this impact our close range build? Our close range build should have a shotgun and an SMG, but before we transition to delving into that, let's look at these talents to see how they synergize. We stumbled upon one of the biggest problems with this talent. Almost every weapon talent is lost when you swap, and most only provide benefits after a certain amount of time. What's the point of using Preservation when you lose your repair halfway through because you've swapped off the weapon? What's the point of using Killer when you get the kill, have the buff for one more kill, and then Versatile is out so you have to swap and now Killer is lost? This is especially brutal with exotics. Lady Death requires it to be equipped to get your stacks, Chameleon loses its stacks when it's swapped away, etc, etc. The only talents that aren't really affected are those that give you upfront buffs or buffs that last past the swap. These being Optimist, Vindictive, Unwavering, Flatline, Behind You, Sadist, Eyelist, Ignited, Thunderstrike, talents like the Rail Splitter, Glory Days, New Reliable, etc., with the glaring exception being the Rock and Roll, which has extra rounds evaporate when you swap away from it, Scorpio, Dr. Home, Bullet King, Nemesis, St. Elmo's, and Oreo. Vindictive and Unwavering in particular seem like they were made for Versatile. SMGs already have plenty of crit, and so once you activate the talent, you can switch over to your other weapon that needs that additional crit value. Let's step through the rest of the list with a close range build in mind. Optimist is terrible, especially since the advent of Expertise as it gives you additional weapon damage. Flatline is solid if you have a linked laser or some other way to pulse. Behind You only applies to MMRs and rifles, so it's a solid contender for a long range build, but not for this one. Sadist, Eyelist, Ignited, and Thunderstrike all require their requisite status effects. The trouble with these is that getting a high proportion of enemies under these status effects usually requires an Eclipse build, which requires building, usually, completely for status effects at the cost of weapon damage. Plus, the Eclipse backpack already gives you 30% amplified damage for your weapon and your statuses too, so that is doubtless better than Versatile for that build. We could use Ongoing Directive, but this lacks survivability for these close ranges. The final status option, Ridgeway's Pride Chest. It gives us a lot of repair while giving our Sadist weapons a trigger. With these statuses, we could swap out Sadist for the Grudge, and this would give us extra crit for our shotgun. Or we could go with both Sadist weapons and get extra damage, a lot of it. We don't have any other good named options with a talent that will synergize with this build. However, the Oreo and Scorpio are very good options. The Oreo already has so much damage, I don't think you'd want to swap away for the sake of keeping it versatile, but it's a choice you can make for yourself. Scorpio is a bit lacking in damage, but can serve as a primer and CC for the enemies to set up an Unga Boonga SMG damage phase. So we got some options for weapon talents and chest talents. What skills should we use? Our primary skill should basically be the Striker Shield. It's really strong for close range and gives us a range indicator. You can use other status skills to proc our status effects like a Stinger Hive for Sadist or a Pulse for Flatline. Alternatively, a decoy to draw fire while you swap and laser down the enemies. Finally, a Reviver Hive is of course the boring recommendation. Now it's time to talk brands and gears. Since SMGs have so much critical hit chance, I don't see any reason to run a brand-based build. You're ending up with weapon handling rolls that won't go the distance, quite like the damage of a gear set. Hunter's Fury is an obvious and powerful choice, one of the best gear sets in the game, made for close quarters. Not only does it proc a status for Vindictive, it gives us survivability and crowd control. And not only that, it also gives us an indicator of when targets are in range and when our talents will be active. This is probably the best choice, Hunter's Fury with either Ridgeway's chest or an Obliterate chest, SMG or Shotgun with Sadist, Vindictive, or Unwavering. Striker is of course very good for blistering damage, and shotguns will stack it very quickly. You'll probably want to run some armor cores to take extra soak while you're swapping or moving to enemies out of range. Unfortunately, the Striker backpack gives us most of the damage of Versatile without having to swap or contort our build around it. A better option might actually be the similar Heartbreaker, since Heartbreaker gives you damage and bonus armor. The chest piece of Heartbreaker is actually particularly good, giving us a lot of damage and even more bonus armor. We're missing out on a weapon damage core's worth of damage since we're not using an LMG or AR, but it's worth it. With this, we can throw on Flatline for more amplified damage. Another intriguing addition, we can also throw on Flatline for more amplified damage. Another intriguing addition would be Intimidate. So we got some exciting options here, most of which I don't think I've ever seen anyone use or make a build video about. Why is that? Let's look at a hits to kill comparison on Heroic Solo using our calculator, the Blake tool. See the video in the description for how to use this tool. We've got a Hunter's Fury build with 20% amplified damage from that talent. The first build has Obliterate on the chest and Composure or Companion on the backpack. The second build has Versatile on the backpack, and that's the only difference between the two. The weapons have Flatline on them for a decent amplified damage boost. I chose the Vector 45 because it can run the Link laser and because it has relatively low bullet damage, so we should see as significant a difference in hits to kill as we are going to get. Keep in mind that this is with Hunter's Fury at only one stack, so our hits to kill is only going to go down, and the difference between these builds is going to be even lower than what is on here. However, if we're running Legendary, the hits to kill will go higher and you will see more of a difference. Remember that this is for a standard enemy. Enemies with armor plates will have a higher hit to kill, LMG gunners will also be higher, but rushers and snipers will be lower. Now let's see the difference as we change from Companion on the first build to Vigilance, assuming it has roughly the same uptime as Versatile. We can see that Vigilance closes the gap significantly, and that's a big issue. Let's rerun it with 4-man scaling. We should see a big increase in hits to kill that should widen the gap between the two. But again, the difference isn't that significant. 2 to 4 bullets on a red at 1200 RPM? Not a big deal when you don't have to worry about swapping and reloads and all of that. Well, let's recap Versatile's problems and add some more. Number 1, the range is very hard to gauge, so it's hard to tell when the talent is active. This adds mental load to what can already be a chaotic combat experience. Lots of good weapon talents aren't really usable, including some of our favorites like Preservation. When you swap weapons, you are losing DPS, plus you have to make sure your weapons are reloaded, so you will still have to reload and then swap on top of that. Otherwise, you risk swapping to an empty weapon. So it's very hard to get in the groove and feel good about it. Unwavering reduces this worry somewhat since your reload will be practically instant. Most agents weapon swap when their primary's mag is empty and don't have enough time to reload. The timing nature of the talent means that this won't necessarily coincide with the talent being active. At the beginning of the engagement, once you run that first mag dry, you're still within the 5 seconds of the talent where you can't swap. So when you need the damage the most, you can't have it. Number 4. In addition, this scenario, your primary will be empty with no way to automatically reload it. So when it comes time that versatile runs out on your secondary, you'll be swapping back to an empty weapon and losing time when instead of shooting while the buff is active, you're spending the buff time reloading. Swapping at the right time also adds mental load that most agents just don't want to deal with, and when you screw up, it feels really bad. Number 5. The builds to make versatile work require a fair bit of hand-wringing to achieve synergy, without a clear definitive damage advantage at the end of the day. Any damage increase is most likely lost just by the fact that we lost DPS by swapping weapons. Most agents, myself included, build around a primary weapon and don't futz around with our secondary sidearm grenades or signature weapons much. I noticed that I don't even mention these aspects of the build in most of my build videos, and there's an unconscious reason behind that. I put on the build, run with the weapon, and use it pretty much through the whole activity without swapping. Adding a swapping mechanic changes the way I play. The basic problem, to sum it all up, is that while this has a high damage potential, it's hard to tell if you're getting that potential, and it's hard to manage the swapping mechanic. Swapping takes a fair amount of time and doesn't feel good most of the time. In essence, it feels very bad when it isn't active, but also doesn't feel particularly good when it is. Okay agents, that was a much longer investigation than I thought it was going to be. It was almost a build video. I've added it to our build videos playlist. Look there if you want to see more builds. And of course, check out our other playlists and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content. I hope you liked the math as much as I did. Like the video as much as you like the recent thirst trap characters we've seen in the past manhunts. Looking at you, Stovepipe, you big hunky bullet-ridden guy, you. And as always, agents, thanks for learning with us. Until next time, this has been Dispatch. Take care out there.